can say this trip's starting off well. Yeah, so pretty much get fuel starvation and I have to stop on big hills, wait for the pump to build up pressure in the line to the carburetor, and then I can take off again. There we go, it's just starting to drop to a point. I'm just gonna have to stop here because we're coming up to a corner. There's only a couple of major hills and it's pretty flat, and there's somewhere that I'm going to pull into and see if they've got a fuel filter or something of the sort. It's about the only thing here between here and Monday, and it's not quite 3 o'clock on Friday, so we'll go with that. We'll get moving when this next car goes past.
Part number so you know what to get.
Perfect. Just finished at Ruapehu Motors in Reitahi. Lads here, absolutely fantastic. So I think I might have been on something, but now to road test it and see if I were right. Now sitting in Ohakuni. As I left Reitahi, I found, yeah, it goes better. There's no doubt it goes better, but it doesn't go as it should. We only cleaned out the fuel filter. We didn't replace it because it's not that easy, because they didn't have one in stock, which I don't expect them to. So I'm kind of at a bit of a loose end now, deciding what I'm gonna do. As you can see, the weather's pretty average, so I'm not quite sure the plan. If you know the Parapara, it's not the most brilliant of roads to limp a vehicle, especially in the dark. So it's sort of a little bit for my own comfort and everybody else's comfort, and a little bit of safety too. So the rain is coming down pretty heavy. I have got new door tops to fit, and I think that I probably need to do the seals when I do it. So things haven't quite gone to plan. We've kind of gotten somewhat used to not having a plan. This time I had a plan, but it hasn't gone to plan, so I'm making the most of this. I'm going to set up while the rain has stopped, hopefully. It's not as quick, nor is it as simple as a fold-out awning. Got my pull noodle on here so they don't rip a hole in the tarpaulin, but that should keep the prevailing rain and wind out from this side nice and sheltered, which means I can cook with gas and not gas myself and so on. So as I came in on the sign, another 11k up the road is four-wheel drive only, and or chains, because there's snow and ice, so gonna be in for a bit of a cool night. Time to start prepping dinner, and had grand plans of sausages. Probably would have been frozen. Bearing in mind I'm about 3 hours short of where I'm going to end up tonight. Stopped at the local supermarket and got some fresh patties. Burgers. Who would have guessed? So it's safe to say that I'm a little bit disappointed about how this trip's gone. When I first purchased the Offender, the old owner did make mention to me that the front tank seemed to be a little bit troublesome. I can't quite remember how he explained it, but he explained that the front tank was a little bit troublesome, that he didn't really use it. I never gave it too much thought. He also mentioned that when he repaired the rear cross member, he replaced the rear tank because that was rusty. I've never really used the front tank. This past week, 2 weeks, I've been doing all my running around in town on the front tank and continually topping up the rear tank to get fuel discounts and otherwise to get it full, and that was going to be my going away tank, use the front one around town. Just a little bit of bullshit budgeting, really. What's happened is I've sucked heaps and heaps of rust and crap and otherwise through into the fuel filter. So it is running better, but the reality is it's not good for the engine leaning it out, but I also didn't want to just call it quits and go home, which leads me to my trusty steed. I'm actually off to an event this weekend, one that I've done before. Did it last year with my eldest. He wasn't quite hadn't done enough training to do it this year. I'm quite glad that he didn't now, because this would have gutted him. But I'm also happy that I'm in a good enough headspace to consider doing the event. Really cool event, cool bunch of guys. Ridden a couple of the events before. So Stephen cooking dinner. For the record, I've found a sharp knife. I'm not butchering cheese, but I am making burgers. And this time they're beef burgers. Previously they've been lamb or chicken. So this is adventurous. Mixing it up, keeping it real, and all those things. Looking on the bright side, I could be sitting at home or even sitting at work and editing video. But I'm sitting at a dock campsite under the mountain, dressed in a blanket, somewhere around 4 degrees outside at the moment. And it's okay. This is van life. It means that I'm not just going home with my tail between my legs. And that's quite important. Adds to the adventure. Well, it's disappointing not to be heading off to do the bikepacking event. I'm also mindful that it probably may not have been my most sensible decision ever. But it's very easy to make excuses of why you don't want to do something. And so I'm just going to go and do it anyway. I've been battling an ailing body for the last couple of weeks since the last trip, actually, to the point where I almost couldn't go to work on the Tuesday because I couldn't move my arm. Aggravated old injuries. Perhaps this is actually a good thing, and I'm not going to put myself in a position where I find myself in a very awkward position a long way from home, unable to drive, unable to ride, and unable to get myself home either. So, sort of thinking that this could be a slightly positive thing. But I'll remain disappointed. Last night wasn't anywhere near as cold as I expected. It's actually cold outside now in the breeze, but I found myself far too hot in the night, which ended up taking a few off, and I'm just super comfortable. I'm supposed to have gotten down to 4, but now it's time for coffee. It's running Verna Stag, which is a coffee from Ecuador. And this one's come to me from the Rocket Boys in Hamilton. So the plan is get some coffee on, have breakfast, get organised. We've got about an hour and a half before the rain's supposed to set in again for the day. Clearly I need that coffee. I've forgotten how the clever dripper works. Thankfully I've got more water, because all that just went straight through and into the cup. More proof I can't multitask. So yeah, gonna get breakfast done and then hit the road and head for home. I feel like I'm wasting the weekend, like I could possibly stay out another night, and I'm not sure what I'd actually do because the weather's pretty average. I also have a vehicle that's in a condition that it's not actually that happy about, and I'm wondering how much of a limp home the drive is going to be, which is why I didn't do it last night. It travels along okay, I'm just concerned about it on hills, and also that the fuel filter, well, it's blocked. Won't take many more contaminants to block it further and make it less drivable, because it got really undrivable really quick. Well, I feel there's only one thing left to do. Hastily constructed awning peg. Almost regret the good money I spent on awning pegs that didn't work. But those ones are shiny, so they get points for being shiny. So I've just done the 12 odd K from Owakuni to Reitahi. Might be about 14 or 15 from where I was staying. And it's running better than it was last night after we pulled the fuel filter out and cleaned it. Seems to, goes well. It pulls like a schoolboy, but it's not lost on me that I've had a similar thing happen where straight after the fix the vehicle didn't run quite right, but then proceeded to run really well after it had settled with a few K. So there's potentially still a little bit of crap in the fuel line and in the carbs and otherwise that's now been sucked through potentially. I had that in one of my other vehicles at Horopito where I was planning on going to, got back to Reitahi and it was running fine, so I carried on with the rest of my trip. And so now I'm sort of questioning whether I could have carried on safely last night with no issue. Here's hoping that it's as good as I think it is. Otherwise it's going to be a long drive home limping it in first gear and stopping every time that it runs out of fuel pressure on a hill or fuel on the carburetor. That's why I've started early this morning. It's just gone 8:30 and doing it in daylight makes it a whole lot nicer than trying to do it in the dark and in the rain in case it is an issue. It's going really well for quite some time, but got to a few of these bigger hills and just starts to wane a little bit. Nowhere near as bad as yesterday. I've got a couple of theories on what's happened and how it's happened, but the fuel filter's just not letting through enough fuel. However, I believe that the reason for it being worse last night than now is there's nothing quite like heavy deceleration to get vacuum up to clear crap out of the jets, the carb and that sort of thing. I think that's what's going on, but limp at home, order some new fuel filters and put one in it, keep one or two as spares because I have a feeling there's a new front tank coming on at some point. We'll carry on, keep limping it, but it's actually going pretty good. So after a little episode with the fuel filter and discovering the issue actually being the front fuel tank having rust in it, it's now time to remove the front fuel tank. So let's crack into that.